thank each of you for coming. We've got a challenge here to work on this EMS study. You've heard the commissioner say a number of times that public safety, health and safety is the most important thing we do, and this is at the center of it. So we've got about 5 weeks to accomplish what normally takes 5 months, and so there's a couple things I need to cover with you because of being a voted on committee. We have some legal opportunity requirements. Please be aware that this is being videoed and taped, and the minutes will be transcribed for us. Laura, and I appreciate you being here, Laura. But we'll need to get work. We've got till November 15th to have this completed and be ready to take to the commissioners. And I promise you that we've got a varied experience here, and it's going to take give and take to come up with what we perceive to be the best model for the county. So first of all, what I'd like to do is start by going around the room and letting everyone introduce themselves and what what areas they're representing. I'm going to even ask some of our visitors to identify themselves, because we've got a lot of valuable talent here that we can bring forth a good model on this. Joey, I think if you'll start, please, sir, and just go around this way.
All right, I'm Joey Hendricks. I'm a shift supervisor at Union EMS. I've been in the industry since 1979. I've been with EMS since 1986.
Okay.
Tim Adams, operations manager. Handle day-to-day operations of Union EMS. Now going on since about 2002. Been with the service since '93. In EMS field since '87. So.
I'm Greg Cowick. I'm one of the field training officers at Union EMS. I've been with Union EMS since 1989. Been in the business about 27 years.
And I'm Eddie Cassidy. I'm the sheriff, and I've worked with all of you for 40 years. Most of them.
I'm Butch Plyler, Wesley Chapel. I've been around. I looked around this table. I think I've been here around this table longer than anybody in Union County, but in this table. But I was president board of directors of Wesley Chapel Volunteer Fire Department for 23 years. But I'm semi-retired.
Mike Litz, president of CMC. Appreciate you all coming together this morning over the next 5 weeks to see how we can all work together to enhance EMS services for Union County.
I'm Alicia Campbell. I'm AVP of Operations for CMC Union, and I have operational responsibility for CMC Waxhawk too. And I work with Johnny on Safe Kids as well.
I'm Rob Fitzgerald with Waxhaw Fire Department. Been in the fire service since '89. Was a paramedic with Union EMS for 12 years.
Gary Silsby, CAD technician for Union County 911. I've been with the county for 10 years. I worked on the floor as a seasoned dispatcher and came into the administration department.
Sharon Crook, operations manager for communications. I've been with the department for a little over 8 years now. I'll be with you guys.
Larry Bricker, division director in emergency communications.
Curtis Digg, executive director of emergency services for Union County. Been associated with emergency services since 1979.
Don Gaddy, chief of Moss Springs Fire Department. I've been in the fire service since 1961. Been chief for 27 years.
Johnny Blythe, Henry Bridge, VFD, 84.
You're 84 years old.
Been in
Jeff Yates, Union County Finance. I'm probably the newest guy to the county in the room except for Curtis. So I know I've worked with just about everybody in some capacity or another in the room. So I'm looking forward to it.
He's got the purse strings. My name is Richard Helms. I'm county commissioner. Been in Union County most all my life. Been working on this project for over 2 years now. So looking forward to coming to a a successful completion. And we have a Commissioner-elect, Stoney Rushing, with us this morning. Appreciate you coming. And Chief?
I'm Ron Fowler, the fire chief for the city of Monroe. And I just wanted to be here because of my concerns of how this could affect the city of Monroe and to be able to offer anything I may can to help as well.
I'm Dr. Chris Rosanova. I'm board certified emergency room physician, board eligible in pre-hospital medicine. I've been the medical director for Union EMS since '06, and actually only the second medical director since its inception. So I'm just here to offer my expertise in any way I can, bring everybody together.
I appreciate it. Like I said, we've got the talent to come up with the finest model that's available in the county, and I look forward to working with everybody. Like I said, November 15th, this was set up by a board committee, therefore it has legal ramifications in the sense that, you know, like I said, it's going to be taped, and we have to have a meeting, we have to do public notices. And actually, the subcommittees also have to follow the same rules. One of the key things we need to do is we need to elect a chairman and a vice chairman. And what I'm asking is that as we elect these individuals, we also give them the authority to call special meetings. And that's a critical point. Otherwise, what we'd have to do is we'd have to come back together as a group and vote to have a special meeting, and by letting the chair and vice chair have the capabilities to do that. Special meetings require 48-hour notice. And we might consider as well, we're going to have to, my opinion, and y'all will tell if I'm correct, that we'll probably need to meet weekly to make sure we're on target. And Johnny has an excellent example that there's no way this committee can work wholly and achieve our goal. So we're going to have these subcommittees, and it's like fishbone, call it, and the subcommittees, like I said, we'll have to adhere. I've already spoken with Lynn West, and when we break off into committees, we'll need to identify a chairman in that group as well, so they can call meetings as well. And Lynn West will be has volunteered to schedule those meetings and schedule rooms. The subcommittee meetings don't have to be videotaped; just you'll have to take notes. And basically, if you don't vote on anything, don't take any action, you just have discussion. All you got to do is annotate what your subject matter of your discussion was. And that'll adhere to the legal requirements of doing this. All meetings are open to the public, and we encourage input. So with that, let's have a little discussion on how we want to do the chairman and vice chairman, because and nominations.
Chairman Helms is Commissioner Helms, excuse me, Commissioner Helms. You've been the primary one speaking today, so are all of the meeting group nominations the people that was going to serve on the board here today and present?
Yeah, well, the exception, Commissioner Thomas has got a prior commitment that's going from 9 to about 9:30, and I think he's going to join us after the fact. He's been involved.
Been about 30 minutes late.
That's okay. I didn't see him here. So,
but the original annotation that came out in the commissioners' meetings,
correct,
those individuals will be the ones that will participate in that. And that doesn't mean you can't solicit expertise, and I'm glad you mentioned that, Tim, because we had this conversation yesterday.
correct.
And we clearly don't have, there's a lot of talent in this county that we need to pull on, and the expectation is Tim is the EMS, Mike the hospital, and Curtis for the county, that use all resources available to you in the county to help us achieve this goal. I do not see us failing to achieve a new plan as failing is not an option. We can't go back. We can make the system better. I mean, I think our EMS brethren, he'll agree that we can improve things, and so I think we need to go from there. So I have a nomination for chairman
Johnny Black.
I second it.
Johnny, is that acceptable?
Yeah.
I nominate Billy Knutt, Chief Bill Knutt.
All right.
Second.
Let Billy do it. Since he isn't here.
That's why
Well,
he's gonna be here.
I understand that, you know, like I said, this is gonna take as much as 3 meetings a week. And I know, and I'm looking back, and I know chiefs have jobs, you know, a lot of us have jobs that it's gonna be challenging, so. I hear nominations of 2 individuals. And first, I'd like
Have you
to,
talked to Billy?
No.
Yeah.
I figured his willingness to serve on the committee, he would be willing to serve as chair.
well, I know that Bill works. Well, we'll do this. Let's take a vote for Johnny Blight as chairman. Raise your hand. I think that carries. Curtis, will you count how many were positive? I think 3 the only saw that I didn't vote for that. Is that correct? That's okay. All but 3 voted for Johnny. Johnny, I get to turn it over to you now.
We got to do the vice chair.
Okay, we'll do the vice chair. Nominations for vice chair.
Tim Adams.
Do what?
I second that.
I nominate Tim.
Okay, all in favor of Tim being vice chair? It's unanimous. Tim, you get the vote too. All right. You know, talking about our responsibilities that we have here, and I know all of you have been privileged to see in the previous plans, the Fitch presentation that was our option that was not chosen. But I will say there is some good suggestions as part of that. And I see that we have our current plan, we have suggestions for another plan, we have the Fitch recommendation, and I see us taking this, the best of each, and combine it for a better model. So I do have some copies of that for the committees if they want to use it as a resource document. And but our challenge is to define a model. And I know talking with Tim, some of your supervisors, and you know, we've heard the word dynamic. Mm-hmm. Dynamic can mean 1,000 different things. And I can tell you that what they do today is very dynamic. You know, it's because on an hourly basis, you're changing to accommodate the needs of the county. And that's important. So, but we'll do that. And also, we need to identify some metrics. And when I say metrics, I mean we've got goals that we need to achieve. Goals like shoot times, response times. So we'll need to address those. Agree, Mike?
Yes.
And and what I'd like when you set up your committees, what I'd like to do is I'd like a cross section on the committees to include the hospital, EMS, and accounting, and the fire departments, that these committees have representation by all groups, because what we're going to have to do to achieve our goal is these committees come out of their individual pieces with recommendations that the group agrees is acceptable. So we don't want a situation where a committee comes for us and gives us a representation that's just unacceptable. And we do have legal requirements here that the county and the hospital have to agree upon. I have spoken with our legal counsel, and actually, Mike, you might correct me on this, but Jeff tells me that because of what we've been through before and the work, a lot of the work we've done, we'll basically be doing the exhibits.
Correct.
And legal review of those will not take as long. So, if you
The model description.
the model description
And the exhibits.
and the exhibits will not take quite as long with legal review. But, you know, with a target of the 15th, which is a Saturday, we're going to have to be completed by Monday or Tuesday of that week to be able to let the attorneys in the hospital and the county review it. So please keep that in mind. And Johnny, you want to come take this, because the next portion, we were very fortunate that our chiefs got together and started looking at this piece and came up with some recommendations. Now, I understand also that we're using this as a guide, and we can amend it. And so if the hospital or EMS has suggestions they want to add to what we look at, then we'll need to break them out into committees. And then today we need to leave here with our committees signed, and they can go forward, because I know there's a lot of work been done already. We're going to have a presentation by Mr. Brinker. He was upset his name was the only name on the thing, but he's done a lot of work pulling data. Sheriff, we really appreciate you being here. Nobody knows the traffic metrics of this county than you and your department, and we really appreciate that, so we're trying to include it. And I'll say to the public, if you have suggestions, they'll have preview to other committees. Contact us. Let us know. We want to know what the public, because we got here because we had the public tell us that our approach was not quite on target. And so therefore, we've got a lot of work, and I thank each and every one of you for taking your time to come do this, because this is probably one of the most important projects that the county has undertaken in a while to make sure we get this right. The last contract has been since '97, I think. So it's approaching 20 years old, and technology's changed. The county has changed in the last 20 years dramatically. So we need to come up with a model that best fits the county. Anyone have something they want to add? Mike? Tim?
I hate to be a stickler here, but my concern, and like I said, my responsibility is with the Union EMS, and to our employees, and of course to the citizens. You guys have been working, the county and the hospital have been working on a contract or an agreement for over 22 months.
That's correct.
We've been in limbo. And as far as my participation in those negotiations has been very limited, along with several of us. My understanding is that we had a contract or an agreement in place. There were some issues, concerns from the fire departments, the Fire Chiefs Association, also from the county, and maybe from the hospital. But it was not a total bust of an agreement. So my thing is, instead of going back to day one and trying to rush something through of a different type of an agreement, what are some of the concerns that we've had with this one we've had in place or tried to adopt for about 4 or 5 times? Is there somewhere where we can address those concerns and add with this agreement, and so we could come up with some kind of valid agreement? It's not going to be rushed. I myself look at it, it's my responsibility, I owe it to our employees for that, and I want to address their concerns too. So that's my responsibility.
Well, I totally agree with you. Y'all have been in limbo for so long.
Correct.
Mr. Lutz and I have had that conversation. Johnny, do you want to say something?
Yeah, we're not going back to day one. That's not what we're doing. I think, and Mike helped me out here, but there will be an agreement in place by the end of the month.
Okay.
The only thing that's being taken out are the areas that were of concern.
Okay.
And that's the only thing we're gonna be talking about here today.
Yeah, so basically, it's the deployment model which we have to
Right.
define
Talk about it.
and make sure that it's meets the performance standards that this group will decide upon. I think that's the most important thing, and for me, the deployment model, obviously, there's a lot of different models you can have. I just want to make sure whatever model we choose is based off data, it's based off forecasting and modeling, and just not what people think or want it to be, but it's really data-driven. And I'm sure we have a commitment of this committee to make sure it's a data-driven process.
And that's one of the reasons.
Does that make sense?
It helps some. I'm still sort of unaware of what the concerns are. And that's my, and hopefully we'll address those starting today.
I would say primarily the definition of what finally came out. Now, commissioners approved the dynamic model about a year ago. But you have to understand, dynamic means 1,000 different things. And what came down when we got down to the 10,000 foot, there was concerns about that portion of the dynamic. Like I said, on a daily basis, he does a form of dynamics to make sure that we have the coverage. So going forth with that, I know that Mr. Brinker has a lot of data he's been compiling. He's been compiling data for months, but he's been really focused on getting some data for us to make sure that we address. We've been looking at software requirements as well. But yeah, I agree. That's why I brought copies of the recommendation from Fitch and Associates, because there's a lot of good data in there. And so we're not starting at ground zero. We're starting really about 60%, and we've got to work out the model, because you made a very valid point. The model that was presented that the commissioners rejected 5-0 was fire chiefs weren't included, your level of EMS wasn't included, and who knows better, sheriff wasn't included. I mean, who knows better than the people that are delivering emergency services in our county how to get there. I can't tell you why, but that's the case, and that's why you're here now. We should have done this 6-9 months ago for these players, but we didn't. That's hindsight. We're going to move forward. We're going to have to do it in a short time frame, but a lot of that information is already there, and with the expertise of the representatives here, I think we can do it. But, yes, sir.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because I haven't been as involved, except for the financial part of this. Seems to me, you have deployment model and metrics, that the metrics should be the thing, and then it's a contractual relationship for the deployment to achieve the metrics.
They are so close.
Because to me, the focus should be in determining what the appropriate metrics are and demand, service level demand that go in the contract. And to a large degree, it's up to the EMS folks and Mike and his staff to meet the metrics.
Well,
I'm asking the question because I don't understand.
I agree with
as this group, as we work through these and we have a short time frame, we're going to have to decide on some very key focus areas. And to me, the metrics are the focus area, because the metrics determine then the service model. It's like saying, I want you to build me a house, and I want you to use these supplies to do it. It's up to the person building the house how they hammer the nail in and how they join that together. Otherwise, we're telling them both sides of that equation. And I guess help me understand, Johnny, from your perspective and the fire chiefs, because to me it's about the metrics and determining the service level demand, and then filling in after that with how the experts, because I'm not an expert in EMS, I can cost it out, but these folks, the EMS folks, fire chiefs, Mike and his team will tell you how they best determine, how they best see fit to get to those metrics and benchmarks. Is that?
You're absolutely right, but there's also one thing we've got to consider too. And we've got to consider the compassion and the coverage to our citizens. Because the county is over 50% I know they call part of it suburban, rural, that, yeah, you got metrics you gotta take care of, but you gotta also make sure that you cover our citizens. We've gotta make sure we have protection for our citizens, because, I know that a lot of the models go off of traffic patterns and accidents and things like that, and you can anticipate that, and the model can do that. But I tell you what, the model cannot anticipate me having a heart attack. And we've got to protect our citizens. So, yes, we've got to focus on the metrics, but we've also got to put the compassion and consideration for our citizens to make sure that we have coverage there. And that's what makes it a little bit
But isn't that part of the metrics?
That's
I mean,
what
if you're
I'm
saying,
totally agree.
If you're saying
Totally
response
agree.
time across the county should be X, that encompasses all response time, right? Isn't that the metric?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Where's Purvis and Larry? You guys are backing me up, right, on this thing? So if we say, here's the metric we want to achieve, A, B, C, D, and E. And then if they're not achieving D and E, then the deployment, how you deploy to achieve D and E has to change, but that comes in the form of measurement. And I guess my concern, general concern, and I've worked with systems that were dynamic and static deployment and fire-based, all the different versions working in different cities, is if we define metrics and define deployment, then one of the two have to give. Because you can't do both and expect any latitude in achievement. Is that?
Jeff, you're exactly right, and that's what we did over the last year, is we were really focused on response times, and the proposed plan would have increased response times by about 30% over historical norms. I think the issue is, people had concerns about the model, but we do need to focus. Ultimately, it's about the service we give to Union County citizens, and that is the performance metrics, and that's response times. We can't take our eye off that. And that's, but I think the reason we're here is because there's more interest in the model. The concern is if the model will dictate the response times. If we do it backwards, it could be more costly. It could actually increase response times than what was in the first model. We don't know. We'll run through the scenarios and we'll figure that out. Maybe it'll get better, maybe it'll get worse. But the model will ultimately dictate the response times, either better or either worse.
Multiple models can achieve the same response times that are required. There's not one single model that can facilitate the response times that we go after. So we need, like you said, we need to look at the various models and see what best fits Union County.
Basically, if you just tell us, what is it that you desire? You want the same response time for everybody across the county, or you want to put it out in bands, whatever. Tell us what you want, and then let us go do it.
I don't disagree with that. What I would ask is, what service are you giving now? How do you arrive at those response times? How do you come up with an average of your response time? It's easy to say, these are all the calls in the county, and your response time is 20 minutes. But that's got absolutely nothing to do with the services that EMS renders. I've not been involved with it like Jeff has, very little. But in my perspective is the outlying areas of this county is how do we give those taxpayers north of 218 the same service we're giving Wesley Chapel. Now, if we're doing that now, then let's say that. Let's don't go backwards. Let's move forward, and if we're going to do anything, let's improve it. I have not heard a complaint about the response times. I'm not saying that we are, but I think how we get to those response times is, and Larry has got access to, I think, everything you can ask for in the type of response times. I hear average response time. Well, average response times is not the time you dispatch, the time you arrive at the call. that's a,
We really and truly, Sheriff, we really and truly don't go on really averages anymore.
well, I would hope not.
What we address our response times on now is a 90 percentile. If you have a company, if we have 100 calls in one area, 90% of the time, what we're looking to do is we're looking to have a unit on scene in a specific location throughout the county in a certain amount of minutes.
Well,
So
I think if we put that out there, then let's put it out there and see if it's working.
9 out of 10 times, we're gonna
It's
address
working.
that, and that's what we've been working towards that for several years now.
Well, are you accomplishing that?
We're close. As far as my understanding, what I've looked at in the agreement on hand, and with our last year, we're in the 13-minute time in some of the rural areas. We're better in some of the metro areas, as I call them, as you're talking about Henry Bridge and some of those. Of course, when you start depreciating units and a rise in call volume, you're going to have some stats that are going to be out of the norm. But that's what I think this committee, if we're going to do that, that's what we need to address there. I think we've got a good, I really truly believe we got a good plan in right now, and the way we're running. Can we work on it and make it better? Yes. But yeah, we're addressing that now. And our times, I can give you copies of our annual report. We're obliged to do that through our contract and agreement with the county. We have to submit an annual report.
Okay, since Jeff kind of jumped the gun on us here, threw that out there, I think Larry has all that data.
Absolutely.
So that's what his presentation is going to be on, and that's kind of where we are right now. So, based on the current model, and I don't know what he has over the last couple of months, but he'll go over all that. So let's go ahead and take a look at where we are now, and then we can figure out what we want to do from there.
Can we acknowledge Mr. Canutt, Chief Canutt, joined us?
Chief Canutt, will you introduce yourself, tell us where you're from?
Bill Knupp from the Unionville Fire Department. That's who I am.
Okay, Larry, will you go ahead and do the presentation of the data, and then maybe that'll drive the rest of the meeting.
Well, we'll start with one of the things that, as we were just talking about, what are the numbers, what are the times. Then as you can see, what we've got here is the first column is 3-year totals. We've got the total number of calls of 54,796. Of those, there were 1,648 of a transport 3. And with that, that is an emergency response from the scene to the hospital. The transport 2 and transport 1s are non-emergency transports, and as you can see, we have 35,000 of those, and then we have 17,000, almost half of that, where there were no transports. So that gives you an idea of what the totals were for the 3 years, what kind of run load that we're discussing here. If you break that down to 2013-14, which for the purpose of this ran from October 1st through September 30th, we had 18,459 total runs. 971 of those were emergency transports, and then about 11,000 then non-emergency, and 6,000 that were not transported. Now, that...
Is that transport decided, that's from the scene, that's not got anything to do with response times to the scene?
Right. All this up here is correct. That's what happened as a result of the run. So this is, what their closed
report would say. And with the transport twos and ones, those can be from a scene to a facility, it can be inter-facility transports, and it can be transports that they make, say for doctor's appointments and such. So that's what those two categories there represent.
Would it be fair to say that transport to and transport run has that time is not got anything to do with response average or response to the scene?
Yeah.
Or to the hospital?
If you want, we can examine that as well, and I think that might be something the committee's really.
I mean, I realize that 2 and 1 are for staffing purposes and costs and the things that go with it, probably more than the other.
Yeah, whatever they would want to use, but I would think, yeah. This also just kind of gives us as a group a quick view as to what we're looking at as far as run totals. And that was, so we understand the gravity of what we've got going.
Basically, transport threes are just a higher acuity patient. This patient's worse than the transport twos and transport ones. It's just a hierarchy of basically how sick this person is. So as you can see, once the paramedics arrive on scene, very few patients in the last 3 years have gone lights and siren to the hospital.
And that's because, what is it, they're stabilized?
They're stabilized.
Can I ask a question, please? On your EMS can answer this, on your non-transports, I assume that's when patient says, I don't want to ride the ambulance, but
Yeah, you get a lot of that in wrecks and stuff, they just want to get checked out.
okay.
And not all of the wrecks.
That can also.
Is some of that a result of y'all's expertise that you provided to the patient?
Yes.
Especially in diabetic calls. It's very common to go out to a diabetic call, their sugars drop.
Yeah.
We treat that, we get their sugar down. They have to meet certain parameters to be left.
And then transport's
Not
not necessary.
Yeah. And can you break those kind of calls out? Because I think those are critical response times.
I have them already on that.
Good.
Let me ask a question. Like when you take, excuse me, someone to a doctor that's not an emergency call, that call should be excluded from that time. Can that be extracted out of there?
Okay. Yeah, and this part here is excluded. This is just its very own item to discuss first, which was just the number of runs. And when we come down here, and we're actually then going to talk about times for today's purpose only, we're only going to talk about those code 3. And actually it says response, and that, actually it's a code 3. Yes, response on these, okay? So if somebody calls and says, my neighbor is handicapped, needs a ride to a doctor's appointment, we're not going to see that in the numbers that we're going to talk about. This is just giving us a ballpark of how many runs and what type of runs we're taking. And now we're going to break down and we're going to take a look at this section here. And this is going to tell us how quick we're responding in regards to the emergency calls. And as you can see, overall for the 3 years, the time to marking a route was 2 minutes and 48. Time for the call to the scene was 14:38. At the 34-minute mark, they transported. And by the time they were finished with the scene and back in service again was 1 hour and 28 minutes. Now, we heard the word average a few minutes ago, and nobody likes average. This is not an average. This is at the 90th percent mark. These are the actual times that showed up. So everyone every call from the 90% down was responded to in 2 minutes and 48 seconds or less. And the reason they leave that, they go 90 is there are some situations that come up and you just have to understand that that's the way it is. The industry standard in public safety has been set at the 90th mark, and that's pretty well accepted even in EMS. I mean, they're very much.
It sort of explains what
That's
that
hard to
is.
say.
And a question also, if I may, when you speak of call to on scene, that is the time your call taker picks the phone up and we're on scene, correct?
And the
Okay, so
same
that
thing.
involves communications along with EMS.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
I'll tell you what, give me just a few minutes to go more into this, and then we're gonna come back to that. Okay, go ahead. Did you have something?
No, I was wanting
Yes.
that to be clarified for everybody too, to make sure everybody understood when it's call and route.
What we're looking at today on the board is the phone rings in dispatch, and the ambulance crew says that they understand, they've got the run, and they're on their way. And this one here is that they're ready to go, okay? Or they're on the scene. What we can see from this, that in 2013-14, we have a 43-second reduction in that call to and route. And we've got another 13-second reduction here to be on the scene. The times, this was pretty interesting because that hardly ever happens. They were the same as far as the time to call the transport, and then they were back about 40 seconds quicker on.
What do you attribute the 43 seconds speed up time to? What do you attribute? What did you do to do that?
When I look at the call to and route, that's your guys.
Well.
And I mean, you can throw in about a minute or 90 seconds, a minute and a half, 2 minutes for us.
Correct.
I mean, but I'm assuming, in 2 minutes, you can't take the call and dispatch it and that's being right in 9 seconds.
The call, what we've been able to do, we've been working with EMS at the end of the year, trying to put some things together and be able to work to reduce some of this. Part of it is what we've been using for the last couple of years on the dispatch side, what we call to drop. And that is where when we get the call, we ask where you're at and get the very basics as to what you have, what your issue is. At that time, we dispatch, but we stay on the phone and ask a lot of questions that we can further give information. What EMS has done recently is that we were able, because of the upgrade with our CAD system, turn on the CAD and be able to know where their vehicles were and be able to estimate the time travel from where they're at to the scene. And so we've been able to dispatch the closest ambulance based off of that. That and the fact that they have been responding quicker, making notice that they wanted to do that, we were able to drop that. When it comes to the fact that it only drops a little bit though on call to time to scene, there's a lot that you can't really do about that from the standpoint that there's drive time involved. It doesn't matter how well you are as a driver or how you do certain things, that time's pretty well going to be consistent for the call due to the fact that you're going to run into road conditions and such. So the things that we actually have control over is our ability to reduce the time that it takes to get the call and get it out, and the time to get to the, that then hopefully gets them to the scene quicker. So that's the deployment we're looking for.
Quick question as well, Larry, for the call to and route time. Now, I know at one point EMS was 24 hours. What year did you guys go to the 12-hour shifts?
We actually went to 12-hour shifts in 2003. I know we had some more before then.
Well, you're talking about time.
2013.
The total migration to a 12-hour shift, we started around January of 2013.
So so that would be attributed to some of that time as well, because the people would be in the truck, so they would check around a little sooner.
And so, like I said, it's on the, we have a 90th percentile, and it shows our decrease in shoot times, what we call shoot times.
Okay, so the 13 seconds then would really be attributed more to the AVL being turned on. And when was the AVLs turned on?
This was sometime around May of this year.
Yeah, that would only include 2 months, I think, of that data, wouldn't it? So-
Well, this here runs through the end of September, so, yeah, it'd be about 4 months.
And along with AVL being turned on, a number of our crews have voluntarily began experimenting with more dynamic deployment. Instead of sitting in the main station waiting on a call, they've gone out. If you've gone down 74 and saw the QT, we've always got somebody sitting there. That's just one of their spots they like to go.
So what I would like to see,
and they'll move around, and that is, they're in the truck, they're closer to the calls.
right, so what would be interesting to see is, we need to split this data up. I mean, this is good, I understand what you're doing, and it makes sense, but what I would like to see is, we've had specific things that have occurred at a certain time frames. We need to look at the data prior to and then afterwards, not together, so that one, we can see the impact that the change made or did not make. I would like to see that spread at some point.
Would it be fair to say that really this group is concerned about the first two, and that's time dispatch to on scene? The rest of it is not much we can do in this group about it.
Well, I think it's really the time on scene is the thing, because, and the other thing.
I think, that's what I think.
I'd like to know, which kind of fits into the whole, if you look at it as an entire system, including the VFDs, is time to on scene for first responder, also in relationship to the time that the ambulance shows up, because that's not, the time to scene doesn't mean the first person there dealing with the incident.
I think it's the
It deals
first.
with the first person, and this deals with the ambulance showing up, but there's also a person that shows up ahead of that to begin the immediate service that's needed. So, I mean, to me, maybe even having that number and understand how they relate to each other and how our staffing our VFDs, and because you're talking, one of the options is deployment, and how deployments work with the VFDs, and how that whole thing works together, because it's a continuum from the shoot to the pickup, not just skipping over the first responder to the pickup. Right? Isn't that wrong?
I disagree with that to some degree. The reason why I disagree with that is what we're specifically, in my opinion, what we're looking for is the time until that advanced care is on scene. You're exactly right. First responders definitely take that 14 minutes down to, if I were to wager a guess, I would say it would be anywhere between 3 to 7 minute time frame, roughly. But the concern that we have is the time that it takes for that unit to get there and begin the advanced care. With the new model, the concern is that that's going to be lengthened instead of maintaining the 14 minutes.
Right, but if one of the options is using the VFD as part of, using the VFDs as part of the option for deployment and how you place. That's one of the things you could, as a deployment model, you could use the VFDs as the base.
Oh, absolutely.
And run out of VFDs.
Right.
Then that goes the other way, in my mind, because you have, you're stationing your ambulances to where you have the first responders versus all over the place. I'm trying to understand the kind
Okay,
of,
I
I'm asking fundamental.
thought you were trying to say that we want to include the first responder time as that time. That's what I want.
No, I just want to understand the relationship. If you move up one, what does it do to the other? If you move down one, what does it do to the other?
I think he's gonna be able to show those response times in this. I mean, the estimated times, I guess, would be a fair statement. And, from the VFD.
One thing that had been asked, when looking at Billy says, we need to break down different areas, different timelines, and I agree, and I think that's easy enough to do. One of the other things, though, that somebody wanted me to look at was seasonal. Are we hiring in the winter? What about the folks running back and forth to the beach on the summer? And as you can see over here, there really is there's all zero significance in regards to the changes between quarters of the year. So that doesn't, present any major increases, and I don't know that you've ever seen.
And what you're showing here is request of service.
Correct, also.
I haven't saw this yet.
Yeah.
This is the first time I'm seeing this data.
Yeah, but do you feel like, oh, in the winter, we're getting hammered all the time versus summer, we don't do anything type?
We're hammered every day.
Right, yeah, that's that was pretty much, that's pretty much the point for that.
Before you go further, I assume you have the data when we talk about call and route. I'd like to see it broken down, that how long it's in your center, and then how long that from the actual shoot time is time you get the call to the time you roll.
And
Correct.
that's one of the things
Which
that I think we want to do.
That's true. My concern with that is that the faster you get rolling, the less you have to speed down the road and endanger your employees and other citizens. So
My point is just you can't look at the total time that someone else is controlling part of
that's
that.
true. And so
We just need to look at what we have.
You can
control
break that
of.
out.
Dispatch, yeah, and we have the ability, and that would be my recommendation, is to actually use dispatch, and we'll go with that.
Well, when is the call to transport time, when is that time documented?
When the unit checks back en route to wherever they're going,
Yep.
to the hospital,
15-minute time limit?
no. I
Call
mean,
to transport, you mean to a various?
To a hospital.
Well, that would be our response time once we're dispatched to the scene, and then once we leave the scene, transporting the patient. So you're looking at, I'm just using an example.
Pick up the phone
14
till we're en route to the hospital.
Yeah, 14 minutes.
That's the way I
Get on the
understand it
scene,
here.
take 15 minutes, give or take a little bit, take care of the patient, and then transport.
These are kind
That
of,
gives them about 15 minutes to be on scene on that normal code 3 call.
Well, I don't think that, I would question that, but I've never been on a wreck scene that you got there and loaded the patient up in 15 minutes.
Well,
And
and in all fairness,
Ended up in a code 2 call.
in all fairness, Sheriff, it also depends on the situations we run into on the scene.
But I don't think that's got anything to do with this committee anyway. I think
Yeah.
it's till you get to where the on scene.
next, what we've got here, just showing the runs per day of the week. And as you can see, again, it's still pretty consistent, nothing major as far as days of the week, how that operates. We've got this one here that's by hour of the day. Now this one does show a difference throughout the day as you go. It, you know, as most of us see locally in public safety, there's quite a drop in the calls for service between midnight and 7 a.m. Rush hour starts again. People are starting to wake up, find issues that they may have had overnight, and then you come to the peak, which is you know, around 5 p.m., and then it'll start to gradually go back down. So that information can be valuable in putting together some different ideas as you go. And then seasonal, again, those numbers come out pretty well straight. Okay, in order to get the information, the data that I just showed you, what we do is we pull this from the CAD, the dispatch computer system, and what we have for those 3 years, as we said, we have 54,795 total runs. So we have 54,000 rows of information. And the rows go from column A to column HB. So there is a lot of data that's available here in this spreadsheet. And one of the things there's a lot that goes into our CAD reports. One thing would be, we've got a large section that the sheriff's department, law enforcement needs, that we keep that information. And there's sections in there that the fire departments, that's specific to them. There's some that are just specific to us for the CAD, to know what steps would come in next. So what I've done is, in order to analyze the data that I have here, is that I drew it raw from the computer, and then I went through steps which I marked and kept track of each step, and as I filtered out the information that wasn't pertinent to what we were doing. And then from that, that's when I started analyzing what data I had. One thing I'd like to do, Rob, if it would be okay with you, when we're done, is to actually go downstairs and go through the process, and then like go to column 52,000 DD and see if we both have the exact same data in that box. You know, that helped validate the fact that this is the data and how it was drawn, so we can all agree upon the information as we go with it. But one of the things that you can do with it, somebody asked, well, can we do this? And yeah, we can. For this, a real quick example, you know, what our call source was. I just want to know the calls that came in through E911 over the last 3 years. All you got to do is click that, and suddenly I can tell you we had 30,416 calls come in through the E911. So it's pretty simple to work with and operate once you get the table built and like that. And about any question that you might have in regards to, well, how do we do this? How does this happen? We can probably find it somewhere in this table. The answers are generally there if you know what kind of questions you want to ask. So.
Medical calls as opposed to accidents.
Yes, we could do that. We come out here to the nature codes, and right here, each of the, we go through here and we click on each of the different medical, whoops, there's accidents, so we don't want to click on that. And then, there you go, those are just abdominal pain, takes out all the accidents.
Could you take the address of the call, that's the plus, that's the less than 90, where the response time was, and that outlier, beyond the limit, and plot that?
Yes.
I think if you had the addresses, I know my GIS folks can put it on a map. I'm curious because the concern being, how do you address those more rural customers? If, how many of the calls are residents of that rural area that miss the mark on response time is really the question. Are they or are they not getting service, I guess, is the fundamental question. The best way I think to do that is to comply where we fail to hit that response time in those specific slices of the county. Or are the missed response times more in the other areas? I guess identifying, is it an issue, is it a problem really, or?
Do you have that, Larry?
Jeff, actually, when Fitch and Associates did the study, they have some of that already pulled. So that's some information we
have the county broken into 2 by 2 mile grids.
Okay.
And you can show exactly for each grid for the entire county, what's the response time for that 2 by 2.
Because I think that's important to the discussion. If you're addressing, I agree with the sheriff on the question, and I think that's one of the good ways to answer the question.
It'll tell you how
I haven't looked as much at the fish
how
study.
many calls are involved.
Right, volume and response time to that.
Can I make a suggestion real quick? If this is being taped, you've got a lot of information on there about people's addresses and phone numbers and things like that.
It's a big database.
I think one thing we need to consider, agree with what you're saying, because if you go back to your point, the question is, if you can get there in 3 to 5 minutes, and I've heard it's terrible to put ambulances at fire stations, but if you get there in 3 to 5 minutes, that makes me question it. However, I realize that I think it's about 85+% of your calls are in a
in the corridor. What I don't want to happen is that your 90 percentile from a county standard, that 10% always falls out in the rural area. And you have that exposure unless you look at those rural areas like Jeff was just talking about. So I think we have to look at that matrix as well.
Has there been a comparison between the EMS calls and where an ambulance is stationed at a fire department to compare the time it takes the fire department to get there and the time it takes that ambulance from that fire department to get to its location?
It's something that can be done. I have not been asked to do that.
What was that?
Well, let's say if you have an ambulance at Henry Bridge and it takes you 3.5 minutes to get to a call. If the ambulance is stationed where the fire truck is, he ought to be able to get there at the same time. So what I'm questioning is where ambulances are stationed in a fire department, what is their response time to a call compared to the fire department?
That may be a little bit skewed, because we're not taking the fire truck to the call per se. It may be that it's my next door neighbor and I'm there within 30 seconds. So I understand where you're going, but.
Well, if you can be there in 30 seconds, if he's in the fire department, I can see where you'd answer quicker.
Well, it could, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, he's not coming from the fire station.
Exactly.
But I think this map that Larry has up here now is a pretty good indication. I'm not sure what it is, but it looks like he has 8, 12, and exceeds 12. And this is Jeff's GIS folks' map. So that's simply travel time. So that doesn't, go over response times, it's just travel time. So explain that, and maybe that'll answer what you're saying, Butch.
And yeah, this map's been created several different people, but this particular one is done here in-house. We've got the bases marked as they're currently set, and with that, in the light blue, we estimate the time of travel from those locations to be 6 minutes to the scene. We've got 12-minute response times from the yellow or orange, and then these red, which we've got here, and the blue part, those we estimate will exceed 12 minutes from the base.
Why would you have red there at 84? That's basically Wesley Chapel. Why would it be red there and the surrounding is less?
Well, and you've got 2 ambulance right here, but again, it's because of the way the path of travel that would take,
Okay.
and traffic patterns, that little section there, we estimated would take a little bit more.
That's one of the highest populated areas.
And could I add, I know we're looking at a lot of times and stuff like that, we got to come to an agreement how we're gonna measure these times, because I measure times differently than you're measuring.
Correct.
So, my thing is, I've got it for the last 3 months, and I put them out pretty easy for you. You can see it. It's green's less than 10 minutes, yellow's between 10 and 15, and red's more than 15 minutes. But what I'm saying is that I'm finding it hard to understand some of the data that you're giving, because we're not collecting it the same way. Okay, and my thing is that we've got to be on the same playing field. Your data's got to match my data, or there's some differences here.
Where does yours come from?
We draw ours off of our EPCR program, which is our patient care reports, which reflects the times. We receive our times from the CAD computer. So every patient care we go on, every call we go on has times registered through CCOM.
Where's he
so we
getting
generate that.
He's the one that gave him that information.
You're the one that gives it to him.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, yeah, we receive it through like crystal reports and stuff on a daily basis.
Tim, what you're looking at there is the actual response time. This is just a map that's estimating from the bases. So if you're not at the base, you're not you know, you're gonna be okay. And these are conservative estimates too. So this doesn't say, oh, look, they didn't do a good job this week responding here in this red, because we don't know who responded to anything. This is not a response map.
It's just if you're sitting in the station, you get a call and you drive to that point. That's
We
all it is.
believe-
Well, see, that's what I'm saying.
We believe
We're
that would be-
looking at different things. My response, I'm doing code 3s. I'm looking at code 3
I'm
responses to
talking
new
about
QRVs.
actuals. I'm talking about if I'm sitting in the station and I get a call, it will take me predicted 12 minutes to get to pick a point on the
Okay,
map.
okay, all right.
That's all that is. There's no, you've gotten a call, 30 of them are
And when we,
20 minutes.
Like I said, I don't understand. It's the first time I've seen this, so I don't know.
To your point, I think it's important that we use industry standards, so we're
Correct.
measuring ourselves against the industry, so we're consistent, so we know the performance that we're delivering to Union County, how it stacks up nationally, at the state level, regionally. And I think it is important eventually to get down to the response times and go back to those 2 mile grids, so we can really figure out what would be the response time, not at the average, but at the 90th percentile. So as we look at developing a model, and that goes where the forecasting is. My biggest concern is, I think we all want coverage that's consistent across Union County. But I want to make sure it's consistent at the 90th percentile, and that we model that out.
Yeah.
Right, but where I see this as being beneficial to understand as a baseline is these are placements of units today. So if everybody was in-house and we're at a 0 call level and we were receiving a call, that's how long it would anticipate us taking to get there. You could then take the same map and then place the, what's the group again, I'm sorry?
Dynamic.
Whichever group came in and gave the study.
Fitch.
Thank you.
And it should lay right over the top of what
Right,
it's
so,
saying.
I mean,
Can you take the base stations and move them to where they're 74 and see what that map
Typically,
would
what's your
be?
truck setting where you're predicting the next call is going to be?
But that's not what was presented to you, not what I saw presented. What I saw presented was there's a corridor that the ambulances would be stationed within, not a dynamic model. Maybe I misunderstood the data, I'll say that up front, but if it's going to be in the corridor, then we need the same type map showing that while they're in the corridor, to go to those same locations would then be, you know, the 10-minute and over 12.
Exactly right.
So, talking about
Billy.
the 74 corridor?
Yes.
No, I mean, that was never the plan. The plan was to actually take them off the 74 corridor and redistribute them
Yeah,
across the county.
the piece of data he's talking about was the zones that showed the posting locations and the order of importance of those posting locations. So when we got down 3 or 4 ambulances, what he's saying is they would be on the 74 corridor. Yep. That's the priority. And I don't know if you have a map with the calls plotted on it, but that's where the calls are. And so that's where the ambulances would come into. So now what he's saying is, what's the travel time from 74 to 205?
And maybe that's the way we need to look at the data, then if they're being placed differently at different times of the day, then
Yes.
we need to show, if we can, we need to show what those travel times would be, assuming no calls were going on in the county at that time.
I think a lot of times when we look at initial posting locations, everybody looks at that, and that's like we look at it from a static mindset. We have to initially, we have to have a location that we start at. We have to have a starting point. And throughout the day, it's like, I've used the term before, it's like amoeba. Those locations move from hour to hour, half hour. What we were looking at as far as the dynamic deployment models, such as Gaddis down there in Springs area. What we're going to do is we'll move those ambulances as call volume rises. You will move those ambulances in different locations, strategic locations, posting locations that will provide the best service for you and also for the people in the corridor. And also
That works until you start pulling down to the ambulances in the county, then they all gonna go to the corridor, and we're not gonna have an ambulance. And then the response time goes up to 20 minutes.
But
So,
you're gonna have
but if we do
issue
what you're
an A
suggesting-
model.
We don't
if
have
you
it
go
now,
down.
I mean, we've got 95 to 90 percentile, we're within 14 minutes.
I don't think any suggestions have been made yet. So, I think that's what we're trying to figure out.
I think one thing that's critical to understand too, we're not criticizing what you're doing today.
Right.
We appreciate what you're doing.
I think we're doing a very good job.
You are doing a good job.
You are, and what we want to do is look at how we can enhance what you've got and the model and the stations. I mean, you don't control those as much as possibly you'd like to. So hopefully we can come out of this with a model that's going to give you tools to make your job easier, more efficient, and better for the citizens of Union County. So I mean,
And when we develop the model, what we first need to start looking at is, and I think we've all agreed, is we need a 90 percentile, right? And we need to look at the basis, the emergency call, correct? The emergency call, the 911 call, the code 3, priority 3 we utilize in the county.
well, I think one of the things.
And then what we would need to do is then we'll need to look at the response times from the time we receive the call till we get on scene of that, right? Is that that's what we really need to do, right?
Ultimately, we need to look at all the data, starting with CCOM from the time the call is received, because when somebody's house catches on fire or they have a heart attack, when their heart attack starts, that's when they need help from. And so if part of the time is 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes for CCOM to dispatch it, then we need to work with them as well to get that time down. But we need to look at all the data in every part. And this map here is good because it's different than what Fitch and Associates presented on time frames. If you go to their presentation on page 8 that they handed out in their meeting, in the Waxhaw area, covering 10 minutes out, is about where the 6 minutes, because you're going to 12 with the yellow.
Yeah.
Where the blue is roughly what they were showing as the 10-minute. So based off of this map that I have here from them and this map, there's conflict in data, and that's why the fire chiefs wanted to get in here and look at the raw data from the county that's not been cleansed or manipulated in any way outside of here. And so just right now, looking at that and comparing it with this, there's some difference. And so that's what we
Isn't
need
that
to.
response time and that's travel time, so they would be different? I think that's a response time, that's travel time.
This just says current transport units coverage at 10 minutes, and they told me they used MapPoint to come up with that. So that
would be a response time.
using MapPoint?
MapQuest.
No. Microsoft MapPoint is what they told me that they were using for this particular thing, which is just like this. Larry, what did you use to plot this map? Was it MapPoint or GIS or? GIS. Okay, so it's two different mapping systems, but
Yes, please.
That's one thing.
it should be that this map I was told was based off of road miles, not actual response time. So that's where my concern is one starting with good data, and that we look at the entire event from start to finish, to include CCOM, to include, because the rough times up there aren't a true response of what you guys are doing.
Correct.
And so I understand that, and I think we need to look at each component. And part of that is how can we help CCOM to get the call out fast? Because they've got to process a lot of information to know where the call is and so on. And if we can help them get the call out, because we can't drive a fire truck any faster, you guys can't drive the ambulance any faster. So it comes down to call processing and location of the units that are going to respond. But in order to come up with all that, we've got to have good raw data, and then there is data that has to be culled, But we all as a group need to see that data and come up with that determination so that we can come up with a good response system.
The IT department falls under Jeff's domain, and so did you have anything you want to say?
No, I was just going to say, this is, I believe, if what Larry said is this is generated by our folks off the GIS maps.
Right.
Not off any Microsoft system or anything else, but the same maps. The base maps we use universally throughout the county.
Right, that's why I'm glad that this was made, because the other one from the previous presentation was made off of MapPoint. Not that there's anything wrong with MapPoint, but the data here that I'm looking at is different than that. So that's where we need to figure out what's reality, and then what are we working with, and then let's build from there. Because if we're building from skewed data, we're going to have a skewed system.
In all honesty, after I saw exactly what it was you were talking about. There really isn't as big a difference in the two maps, but the problem is that they used the 10-minute and we used the 12-minute, and so it makes it, you know.
Right, but the 6-minute,
Yeah,
looking at
pretty
this,
well.
is roughly where their 10 minutes is at. So there is some several minutes difference, which, you know,
I'd
counts
rather-
towards the person.
Sure, and I would rather err toward whichever one's gonna be the higher
Right.
to get a look at that. And I feel pretty confident this is very accurate for what we have to look at. And again,
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with your data.
No, and I just want everybody to realize too, the purpose of doing what we've done so far today was to give you a basic idea of what we have the capabilities of doing. So as you go through this, if you have questions, well, I wonder if, well, more than likely we can find it. We've been able to see that. Or I wonder if they can make a map that most likely we can. So that was really the things that I wanted to cover, was to give you those ideas, what our capabilities are. I want you to understand where the data comes from, how it's put together. And when we look at different things, to make sure what we're looking at is apples to apples. Again, this doesn't match up with the map that Tim's looking at right now, but it shouldn't, because they're not the same thing.
we look at things different. We look at different things.
Right.
We're looking at response times and time to get a unit on the scene, you know, and that's minus QRVs, no QRVs.
And we have those too.
We're talking about transport trucks, and that's what we attempt to measure. Code 3 calls, no QRVs involved, transport truck on the scene. That's how we break them out. And I think that's one of the main issues that we're here today about, I would think.
Okay, if nobody objects, we're gonna take a short break. Since Larry, you're done, right?
Statted out.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I was
let's,
gonna say, it's boring.
Let's take a
but-
short break and then we'll come right back. Okay?